The temples were not just places of worship. They were centers of education. They were centers of arts. They were centers of crafts. The whole society's life centered around temples. And it is a queendom, means it is only ruled by queens. And he says that it has never been ruled by males. So that is the first account that we get, and it is around 4th century before Common Era. So that means this weightage or this importance that women enjoyed has a very, very long history. That means that all the temples that were there in North India till the 18th century were all devastated. Is that not a cultural holocaust? How many Western scholars or American scholars have shown any empathy for this? They try to belittle it.
So I have Kamal as the first person to ask the question. Kamal, you can ask.
Meenakshi Jain, glad to have you here. And been a big fan of you. Hope your book becomes quite a popular in coming days. I've seen your interview with Raju Malhotra ji in the YouTube talking about Sati system. I've been circulating it quite wide, and it's quite a wide opener. I'm just curious. Since you brought this interesting topic where Sati was not relevant in West Bengal, not even prevalent in south of India, and what was the motive of bringing Raja Ram Mohan Roy? I kind of feel that he's educated abroad, and he propagated, basically, if you ask me, he's actually propagated Sati big time in textbooks, and he's also shown as a reformer. Was it a conspiracy of British to introduce Sati in our system and probably inject into a psyche? Because even thinking about Sati itself is quite treacherous, and the fact of even imagining someone going under a Sati system itself is like quite baffling. So was it a thought through conspiracy of British to bring that into our psyche and as well as into the textbooks? Thank you.
Very, very interesting question that you have asked. I agree with you that it's very difficult for anyone to even imagine the horror of a woman immolating. And as I said, no text ever recommended it, no religious text. Now you ask this very relevant question about Raja Ram Mohan Roy. It is not possible for me to give a clear-cut answer, but I will just share with you what I know. Raja Ram Mohan Roy wrote two texts against Sati. Those texts are available and which I've mentioned in my book. But problematic is an instance that is connected with Raja Ram Mohan Roy's life. It is said that when his brother died, the brother's widow immolated herself. But later research shows that Ram Mohan Roy was not present at that time. So how do we interpret this? I cannot say, but we should know this. And then Ram Mohan Roy also writes about the actual, practice of Sati. And, so he says that, it was said that widows were deliberately tied to the pyre so that they could not escape. When the fire begins to burn them, then they could not escape. But Raja Ram Mohan Roy himself admitted that this was a recent practice, which means that he's indirectly acknowledging that there was no compulsion and that the woman could run away even if she could change her mind while she's on the pyre. Now, what I want to also say to you, that when I said that Sati was hardly known in Bengal, the widows were sent to Vrindavan. Now, after independence, around 40 cases of Sati have been recorded and registered in the government records. Now, it is surprising that not even one of them is from Bengal. Most of these 40 cases are from Rajasthan. So, I am only placing before you the facts that I know. Raja Ram Mohan Roy's role is unclear. I don't want to say anything with more certainty. I know that that instance of him being present at his brother's widows is been, in fact, R.C. Majumdar has written, the reputed historian of India, why should I say Bengal? He has written a book on Raja Ram Mohan Roy, and he has presented these facts before the public. So as a scholar, I would only like to say and talk about the information that I have, that no case of Sati has been recorded in Bengal after independence. Most of them are from Rajasthan. Bengal widows, so many books have been written on widows of Bengal spending their life in Vrindavan. And if you go to Vrindavan even today, you will find widows from Bengal. So how do you match these two things? That in Vrindavan, there will be no widow from Rajasthan according to my information. They're mostly from Bengal. Thank you for asking this question.
Yeah, can I ask one more question?
Kamal, actually, I will limit you over there because we have about six people waiting in line. So we will open up for questions again. So next round, actually, if you have questions, actually we'll get you again. Sorry, this is to get to everybody who are waiting. Prakash, go ahead.
Thank you. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yes, you are.
Thank you. Namaste, Meenakshi ji. It is a
Namaskar.
great honor to listening your speech live. So much information you have given out, which is very valuable for me and my family as well. Mike, talking about family, my questions would be about our family structure. We had a joint family concept, and mainly the ladies are playing major role, sustaining the families and education and everything. But of late, we are seeing that there are major attempts to destroy our family structure. Even nuclear families are not the so-called modern people. They are trying to destroy even the very concept of family and marriage and everything. So why they are doing this, and what should we do to come out of this kind of difficult situations? That's my question. Thank you so much.
You've made a very perceptive observation about the importance of the family, and particularly the joint family, because Indian civilization has survived more than 1,000 years of onslaught only because the social structure was not changed or damaged. And this is something that is really under stress in modern times. And Albert Du Bois, I mentioned Albert Du Bois. Albert Du Bois has written in such great detail because he was living in southern India. So he has written in such tremendous detail on the social structure and the absolutely remarkable family system that he saw there. And he says that, each member of, he did not, there were no single families or nuclear families. It was all grandparents, uncles, aunts, etc. So there's these joint families. And he says that the system is so much of an effective barrier against conversion. because that huge joint family takes care of the emotional needs of every member of that family. Because your friends will be in that family, your relatives will be in that family, they're so sympathetic to you. And he says that, this is something that I really must tell you. He says that, brothers, I see them saving the whole year. And what could be the earnings? There was not really any great source of income. So he says they save the whole year, that on a particular festival, they may buy their sisters little trinkets. And, and he says that these kind of bonds, I mean, only when you see them, then you can visualize. So that, I mean, an outsider who has actually come to convert, he is writing in such detail about the Indian family system that he saw in operation for 3 decades that he lived in India. He said it is very difficult to imagine. And there is another Englishman, his name is Sleeman, William Sleeman. So, he wrote about a Sati that he saw on the Narmada. And it was a grandmother. And she was sitting on a rock. And her family was trying all around her. And William Sleeman writes, the grandmother, a queen is not more secure on her throne than a grandmother is in the Indian family. She is the uncrowned queen, and everyone in the family just obeys her diktats and runs the household that she wants. And he said, the entire family was distraught at this grandmother wanting to emulate, and they were, just so sad and wrought with grief when they saw this. So it's another illustration by an Englishman this time, talking about the grandmother being the uncrowned queen. So what you're saying is absolutely correct. It is the strength of Indian civilization. The way we could survive for thousands of years was by our joint family system. Now, the missionaries, they were very clear that if they want any success, these social institutions is what they have to destroy and discredit. And so the joint family became a special target. But it is very pathetic and sad that, we don't recognize the importance of our social institutions, and we don't recognize the need to preserve and cherish these institutions, which is why we are facing the challenges that we are facing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Meenakshi. I appreciate the detailed explanation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Prakash. I'm going in PTR order. Those who are waiting in line, I'm going in PTR order. So I'll call people accordingly. And we had actually a lot of hand raising that happened, and we took it in order because we were giving justice to the people actually who were hand raised first. So we were going in that order. Once the questionnaires are finished, we will open it for questions again if we have time. And I apologize for the people who couldn't come up to the panel. And before going to the next one, Arpit, you can ask your question.
Ma'am, I've got 2 questions. One is short one and one is a little long one. So how soon do you expect to publish in other formats like the ebook and the audiobook? That's question number 1. And the more important question one, which I wanted to ask, is that when I ask my friends in the US, they have public libraries and they have all kinds of books which are written, especially the latest one, Caste, The Origins of Our Discontent, which is one of the biggest bestsellers. But any book which is written by Indian authors, which talk about India, the right history, and just like your book, none of those books are available in American public libraries, which people there would read. So do you think a real push is needed to make to be made it available to the public there, so that at least there should be wider audience and wider knowledge spread? At least there should be a start. Thanks.
Absolutely, I agree with you, because this is a point that has been raised again and again. Now, as far as my books in India are concerned, one major failing is that they're only available in English. Being available only in English means that the scope of disseminating my views is, by the very nature of the language, restricted. So one way that I have tried to overcome this is to address podcasts in Hindi, because that is the only language that I can avail of besides English. Now the publisher has become very aware of the need to make this literature available in regional languages. So the first work that he's doing is to translate 3-4 of my major books into Hindi, and he's working also on the Kindle edition. The point is that the market for English books is nothing compared to the market for regional books or books in Hindi. They are 10 times more. Now, this problem about my books not being available in the US, what do I say? None of the universities in India recommends my book. So my book, why blame the West? In India, none of my books is a recommended reading in any university. But as you say, the Western academia, at least the American academia, is by and large not favorable to an Indian perspective and an Indian viewpoint. So, there are people, American scholars, I don't want to name them, but if you just look at their writings, it is so painful how prejudiced, how openly biased they are against India. They are scholars who regard Aurangzeb, for example, as a very great secular figure. And just to counter that, we have Aurangzeb's Farmans, which give a totally different perspective. The other thing is that how many Western scholars are appreciative of the extent of the desecration of the Indian civilizational sacred heritage. I wrote a book, Flight of Deities, and in that I discussed cases of temple desecration from all parts of India. Now the cases were so many that it was not possible to take them all into account. So I took one sample from each region. And my study shows that there is hardly any temple standing in North India today, which is predating the 18th century. That means that all the temples that were there in North India till the 18th century were all devastated. Is that not a cultural holocaust? How many Western scholars or American scholars have shown any empathy for this? They try to belittle it. They try to belittle this assault on our heritage. They're mostly unsympathetic. So I have been invited by one or two, platforms to talk to them on YouTube on certain aspects of our history. I've never refused. I have always presented, but the viewership is so little. What is the orientation of second generation Indians settled in America? I'm not very clear about. Have they accepted the Western viewpoint totally? This is something that it doesn't, I have no answer to this question, but I have to confess that my audience my target reach is actually people of the subcontinent. I'm not in a position to fight the battles of Indians settled in America if they want to have a fight. I'm not sure. But that is not my audience at all. But I appreciate your question completely. And I'm in great empathy for that. And no university in India also recommends. So that's it.
I hope they will soon.
Ma'am,
$1 million
just one
question, but
suggestion.
I'm not hopeful, not in the near future at all.
Ma'am, a short
Because,
suggestion.
just one thing, Ravi, if you are going to introduce some of my books into the university curriculum, it requires a 360-degree change. It's not a question of books, it's a question of viewpoint, perspective,
Meenakshi ji, with the new education policy, don't you think somewhere, a change will start? Because we are hopeful that there is rectification that's happening.
See,
And
I have not
we're
seen the
really hopeful.
syllabus yet. No, I have not seen the syllabus yet. Of
Right.
the new education policy, I have not seen the history curriculum and the history readings and the history syllabus. So it's premature for me to say anything on the subject.
Comment about it, right?
Apparently,
Yep.
apparently, it's slowly going into it's taking place, but in a very phased manner. They're
Okay.
starting with the younger classes, and it's
Okay.
building up that way. So
Okay.
I've met 2 people who are in the board who are rectifying the history, which was
Okay.
whitewashed earlier. They are trying to
Okay.
bring back the facts. So
Okay.
keeping our fingers crossed.
Let's hope for the best.
Yes.
Ma'am, a short
Arpit, if you
suggestion.
have any suggestion, yes, please.
Yes, very short. Ma'am, in America, Indians battle this a lot. The first step would you be to make it available to Chinmay missions, because people there send their children for Hindu education to these places?
Yes.
Probably that would be one small step. Thank you.
Yes, that's a very good idea. But it is for Chinmay Mission to take it up, not for me to recommend, isn't it?
It's true. Arpit, thank you. I'm moving to the next questioner. It's Bhargav. Go ahead.
Thank you, Ravisha. Namaste, ma'am.
Namaste.
From Karnataka. Ma'am, my question is, but it's time of Mughal thing, about the Taj Mahal, ma'am. I've seen you talking about the Mughals and the forgotten gods. The thing is, which as far as I have studied till about the Hamid Lahori, so he states that Taj Mahal was built within a span of 9 months. After the death of Mumtaz, he actually goes and marries to Shah Jahan, goes and marries to her sister, and within 9 months, that great infra was built. And Hamid Lahori also states that there was stating that color change. So how do you see this? And according to the survey, archaeological survey in 2016, so the downgate that is made up of wood, it goes back to 11th century. So Shah Jahan was in 15th century, if I'm not wrong. So how this accumulate, or is this also some kind of this Babri Masjid thing happens in the future? How do you see, ma'am?
I'm really sorry, but I have not worked on the Taj at all. So all these points that you have raised, I cannot answer them. But it gives me a direction that I must study these aspects. But so far, since I have not studied, I will not be in a position to answer them fairly.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bhargav. Andolan, you can ask your question.
First of all, good afternoon, Meenakshi ji, namaskar. And,
Namaskar.
And thanks to contribution like scholars like yours, we get a different perspective. I have one question. When Britishers or the Christian invading forces talk about rights of women or empowering women in the name of Sati or making laws against the Sati, while they were making laws against the Sati, during the same time, they were curbing the rights of Indian women like Rani Lakshmi Bai to adopt kids and, make them their own. Any views there? And also, the role of Dayanand Saraswati specifically with respect to the Sati system. Was there any opinion or contribution by this gentleman, when it comes to 1850?
Okay. So there are many questions that you have asked. I'll try to answer some of them. As far as Sati is concerned, I think I have explained that the imperative of the British intervention was not to save Hindu women. It was to give the missionaries the right to convert. It's as simple as that. They were using the ploy of Sati to say that India is a God-forsaken place and the white man's civilizing mission is very acutely required in India. So the British were intervening not for the defense of the so-called rights of Hindu women. They were intervening, they were using Sati as a ploy to give missionaries the right to propagate Christianity in India. Now, this is one aspect of the problem. Now, you talked about Rani Jhansi. That is a political dimension because they were wanting to extend their empire to large parts of India. So the doctrine of lapse was not intended for or against. It was for British expansion. And that is a much later development than Sati, because that is around 1857. Now, as far as Dayanand Saraswati is concerned, I really am not aware of his views on Sati, since my study does not cover him, so I cannot say with any authenticity what his views were.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Antolan. The next one is Rolex. You can ask.
Hello,
Yes.
am I
Yes, you are
audible?
audible.
Yeah,
Yes,
go
you
ahead.
are.
Go ahead.
Okay, I just framed this question. So I had a question. In South India, I see the matrilineal system in Kerala, and earlier the Satavahanas also had rulers whose names were like Gautamiputra Satakarni, where women played a greater role. And there is also Prabhavati Gupta of Rashtrakutas, who she actually ruled the kingdom. And then we have Jijamata, who also had a very greater role in framing the Maratha Empire. So, what I see in South India was a kind of a matrilineal system where women had a very greater role. And then, what we see today in North India is there is a patrilineal system. And as you said, I just want to know the role of women in North India and South India at that point of time, and and in similar way, I also want to know there were different foreign travelers who visited different parts of India. So there were foreign travelers who actually visited the northern part, and there were foreign visitors who actually visited southern part. So was there any cultural assimilarity or similarity when they actually visited the various parts of India? And I wanted to know the role women played at that point of time in the
It's
society.
clear. It's clear.
Okay. So I will answer your question to the best of my ability. You talked about the matrilineal system in South India. So I want to bring to your attention an account written by Megasthenes. Megasthenes was the Greek ambassador to the court of Chandragupta Maurya. So this is the first account that we have of an ambassador to an Indian king. His book is called Indica. Unfortunately, it is lost, but parts of it are preserved in the writings of other people who copied his work. So Megasthenes talks about the Pandya kingdom, and he says that the most distinctive feature of this kingdom is that it is a queendom. It is a queendom, means it is only ruled by queens. And he says that it has never been ruled by males. So that is the first account that we get, and it is around 4th century before Common Era. So that means this weightage or this importance that women enjoyed has a very, very long history. With Megasthenes talking about this, and he does not talk about queendom in any other part of India, but he only talks about queendom in the context of the Pandya kingdom. Then I'll give you another interesting account. That is by an Italian nobleman. His name is Petra della Vella. He came to India around the 16th century. So there's a big jump from the 3rd, 4th century BCE to the 16th, 17th century AD. And this Petra della Vella, he was an Italian nobleman, a rich man who decided that he wants to see the world. So before coming to India, because that's on the way, he went to Iran or Persia. And there he met the Shah of Iran, and he has described his meeting and what he discussed with the Shah of Iran. From there, he came to South India, Southern India. And it is very interesting. He says that, my Dubash is the person who interprets for you. Because you don't know the local language, you need an interpreter. So he tells the Dubash that, I've met the Shah of Iran and I would like to meet the ruler over here. So the Dubash tells him, the ruler over here is the ruler of a certain number of villages, and she's a woman. So that matrilineal system is continuing. So he says that I would like to meet her. So the Dubash takes him to the woman ruler's house in the village, because she used to live in a village. When they go to her house, she is not there. And the house people tell this Dubash that she has gone to a particular village to supervise the digging of a ditch, because monsoons are going to come, and she has gone to supervise the digging of a ditch. So he says, I must see this lady. And so he describes that, when we are approaching that village, suddenly we see a lady walking towards us, and with 1 or 2 attendants, and the Dubash says that she is the ruler. And he says that, I was totally shocked when I saw her, because I never imagined a ruler could look like her. She was dressed as a kitchen maid, and of course, no footwear. So, the women rulers were hands-on rulers. There was no difference between them and the people they lived up under or with. But of course, we have to say that she was not a Chola queen or something. She was the ruler of some villages. And then when he is introduced and he says that he wants to talk to her, so he talks to her and he says, I was so shocked. So he's writing this, that she was as wise as the Shah of Iran, whom I had met some months ago. So, this system of women really dominating, I'm not saying dominating in a negative sense, but, in a positive sense, how they were contributing to their surroundings. And I've talked of Chola women, Cholas. I have to mention a Chola queen, Sembian Devi. Why do I remember her? She married young and was widowed very young. She was in her 20s when she was widowed. And she lived to see her son and grandson become Chola rulers. But she is remembered today for the number of course, temples that she constructed, but for her contribution to Chola bronzes. You know, Chola bronzes is something that is so priceless today. And Sembian Devi is the one who introduced the making of Chola bronzes. And some of those bronzes, you know, the best of them, in fact, are there in museums abroad. But if you see those Chola bronzes, you're breathless. I mean, the vision of this lady that she introduced, and the famous Nataraj in bronze is introduced in her time. And she has a beautiful image. I mean, there are 4 people, Vishnu, Lakshmi, participating in the marriage of Shiva and Parvati. And you know how Lakshmi is gently nudging Parvati towards Shiva. You know, the kind of human emotions that are on display in bronze. So, you know, there's so much we have to be grateful to these women from all strata of society. We have Sembian Devi, who was a Chola queen, and we have this lady who was the ruler of a particular villages, and we have Megasthenes talking about queendom and not kingdom. So that means that these traits were there when our civilizational journey began. And in the north, to just complete your question, and one more thing, there was the Bhukara dynasty in Orissa. It had 17 rulers or 16 rulers, of them 10 were women. So that continues. In North India, in the religious texts like the Upanishads, we have very, very enlightened women, educated women, who argue on matters of philosophy. For example, with Yajnavalkya. Now his younger wife, she is going on questioning him. He says, you know, you are asking so many questions, your head will fall off. But he says, now stop asking the questions. I will give you all my wealth. I've shared with you whatever knowledge I had. She says, no, you have not. And he says, I'll give you all my wealth if you stop asking the questions. She says, what will I do with the wealth? That will be remaining here. What will happen to me when I leave the world? So she wants to know about this rebirth. So, you know, there are very, very many powerful, intellectual, spiritually inclined women. And that continues over the ages. I cannot say that the women were as many, you know, women were rulers in North India, but they contributed a lot to the cultural and civilizational evolution of India.
Thank you, Meenakshi ji.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rolex, for asking the question.
Okay.
We have
Thank
about
you, by
10
the way,
minutes
Meenakshi
left.
ji.
We have about 10 minutes left from our scheduled time.
Yes.
Meenakshi ji, is it okay if we
Yes.
extend it by a little bit more? Or would
How
you
much
like
more?
to finish it exactly at time?
Let
Probably
us first, let's see how many questions we can take by one. And if there are 1 or 2 more, then we can extend.
All right, sure. All right, Meenakshi ji. Next one is Veda. Currently, she is Veda is the last one on our panel. So I was wondering actually if we have time to actually take 2 or 3 questions more. That's why I asked that.
Yes,
But-
yes.
Yeah, Rahul, I'll let you know actually when to open the hand raising. Veda, you can ask your question.
Namaskara, Meenakshi ji. Thank you for a great session and congratulations to Satyameva Jayate team for conducting such a great room. I had a question about the temples of India. As per what the history that I have read, we can only, get the evidences of temples around the Gupta period. That is what is written in a lot of sources that I have read. Is there evidences of older temples available, not just in India, probably the countries adjoining to us? Because I think last year I had come across an article where they have discovered a temple which is more or less like a sun temple in Saudi Arabia, which dated to 8,000 years. So I would want to know whether there are much more older temples than Gupta period that we can see.
It is generally believed that the temples that have survived are dating from the Gupta period. And the most important temple is the temple, Dashavtar temple at Deogarh in UP. Now, it is very interesting that you should ask this question because, in my recent book, again, I don't want to seem as if I'm plugging my book, but there are 2 seals that I have published in that book. Those seals belong to the Indus period. And both the seals show what we can call Proto-Shiva. In one seal, Proto-Shiva is seen seated next to what seems like a structure made of reed, and that could be a temple. And in the second seal, Shiva, or what we can call Proto-Shiva, is actually shown inside that reed structure. So this is conjecture. It's very difficult to actually say whether it is an early temple or not. But there are evidences, and in fact, there are, structures of a sacred site or a sacred image, like a people tree is very sacred in India. So we have on the, walls around sacred structures, we have people tree shown as depicted in an enclosure. So that is not a proper temple, but it shows a people tree surrounded by a structure which is intended to coordinate off from the surrounding areas. So I can say that the concept of sacred space, temple means sacred space, but I'm saying the concept of sacred space definitely existed before the Gupta period. But the Gupta period temple at Deogarh in Uttar Pradesh is among the early surviving temples. But as I said, on seals, you can see sacred space. And in fact, I want to tell you from Mathura. Mathura was an important center of Buddhism, Jainism, and what we now call Hinduism. And image making began of all these 3 sampradayas in Mathura around the same time. And the images were made by the same craftsmen. Now in Mathura, before temples were made, there was what is called ayag pattas. Ayag patta was a slab, a stone slab or a terracotta slab about the size of a mobile phone or even smaller. So those ayag pattas were certainly meant for worshipping, and they were before Common Era. and they were placed somewhere. Obviously, when you're making a yag patta, when you're making these slabs, where are you going to put them? You're going to put them somewhere. We don't know where they were put, but that so many of them have survived. And it is surprising that 95% of the ayag pattas were donated by women whose names are given, whose family profession is given. So these ayag, I'm not saying that the ayag pattas were temples, but I'm saying they were meant for worship. They were tablets of worship. So where were they placed? And just to take back the argument even further, from Mathura, we have an inscription that is dated before Common Era, before 15 Common Era. Why do I say before 15 Common Era? Because that inscription mentions a ruler whose reign was over in 15 Common Era. So that means that inscription is more than 2300 years old. That inscription is only partial, but that inscription says, I'm making a structure. I am making a structure, and it mentions that that structure has a toran. Toran means arch. The structure that I'm making, the person's name is given there. I'm making a structure around a rectangle. That structure, the toran, is mentioned because the rest of the inscription is not there. And it says, I'm making this in honor of Vasudev, Dev of Devs. I'm making this structure in honor of Vasudev, who's Vasudev? God of gods. So it's talking about a structure. It is before 15 Common Era. So we have, but structure hasn't survived, obviously, but that inscription, partly damaged, has survived, and it mentions parts of the structure, including the toran, that is the arch. So obviously, there was some structure that was being made. And where is, then apart from that, of that period, we have found a Vasu Dorjan. Dorjan means part of a door. Vasu is, Vasu, it can be for Vasudev. And that thing that we have found is 8.5 feet tall. So that structure of which it is a part was at least 8.5 feet tall, because it is broken. So the portion that has survived is 8.5 feet tall. So what I'm saying is that the surviving full temple is of the Gupta period at Deoghar, but we have this reference of a stone structure from Mathura before 15 Common Era. We have so many ayag pattas. Where were they placed? It is a question that is an open question.
Thank you, Meenakshi ji. Just one suggestion, small suggestion. I had previously taken Sitaram Goyal's academic courses to know and get into, nationalism or, interested in Indic system. But I would ask whether you have anything similar, academic courses that we all can take up, so that
Not so
even
far.
we can get into such history reading.
So kind of you, but not so far. But this is a thought that you have given me. Thank you so much.
Yes, please do it, ma'am. We would be more than delighted to,
Thank you.
join
Thank
such
you.
courses.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Veda. Before actually I go to the next questioner, I will ask a moderator question in between. We were talking about subversions when the moderator questions were ending, and my question is: was there any resistance from the Indians to these subversions, or how did Indians responded to these subversions?
I presume that you're talking about the colonial period.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. During the colonial period, we were talking about the history that was changed.
Yes. So it is very interesting that you should ask this question, because in the colonial period, we had a center of the East India Company established in Calcutta, that was called Calcutta at that time, called College of Fort William. This College of Fort William, or Fort William College, it was actually interested in translating works into whatever the language. So the East India Company employed Bengalis to help in the translation of texts that they wanted. So it is so astonishing that these three Indians who were appointed by the East India Company, they realized that it's very important to not let the narrative go out of their hands. Obviously, they could not control the East India Company and what it was doing. But these three men, when employed by the East India Company, wrote 3 histories in Bangla, giving the Indian point or counterpoint to certain important events in Indian history. So it is, it is, I mean, the ruler getting back from the ruled so early on. So, when we say that we were colonized, it's not such a simple story, because that story of being aware of your heritage, being aware of the danger to your heritage, and being aware of the importance of preserving your civilizational memory. So these 3 people wrote on important episodes of Indian history which they felt should be remembered. Then, of course, we had people like Bankim Chandra Chatterjee, who wrote historical novels, R.C. Dutt, who wrote so many of them. And in the outside Bengal, there was a person called Raja Shiv Prasad. Raja Shiv Prasad wrote a 3-volume history, Itihas Timir Nasik, History as the Dispeller of Darkness. So look at the title that he chooses, and he writes this history. And Raja Shiv Prasad and another large number of Indians of that time, that time the court language, the British had to decide what should be the court language. And because the British were familiar with the Persian script which they had studied, they preferred Urdu because the script would remain the same. So they decided that we will make Urdu the court language. So it is amazing the number of petitions that they got from the literary class of this country opposing this. And Raja Shiv Prasad was one of them. And these people wrote that identity is closely linked with language. They're making this connection that identity is linked with language. And if you deprive us of our language, then you're depriving us of identity. They said if the court language is Urdu, then we will have to learn that court language because we have to go to court. So we will have to go to courts for so many things. So if we go to court and the court language is Urdu, then that means we are being deprived of our identity. So they request the Englishmen that please make Urdu and whatever is the local language of that area, the language of the court. So these, these are very stray instances that I've cited, but there is a whole plethora of evidence to talk about the resistance, as you call it.
Absolutely. I will take the last question from the audience, which is Advik. Please go ahead quickly.
Sure. Thank you. First of all, it's a pleasure, Meenakshi Madam, to hear your discourse. And thank you, Satyameva Jayate team and all the mods. This has been a wonderful session. My question, Madam, you brought some of the points already in your discussion. The attack was on the intellectuals and especially the Brahmin community, in a lot of the things that you mentioned. And even for a lot of things that in your work as well, you are making it aware of the things that especially the missionaries or the Western European colonists have made. What is the line of course correction, madam? How do, as a regular individual, as an Indian, as a Hindu, what is my course of correction to educate people? Because even the Raja Ram Mohan Roy, half of the Indians still believe that Raja Ram Mohan Roy was par excellence educator. He did reforms and all. And second part of it is, how do you tackle this question? Because we always been told that European colonists brought structure into education, they bought railways and all. We have always had a discussion about this in our local forums, but how do, as a broader society, attack this? Thanks, madam.
It's a very, very difficult question. How do we reattach ourselves to our heritage? It's a very difficult question. I can only say that it's a very difficult journey. And each one will have to find his or her own route. But there are certain institutions that are available to us, which we should use. And one of those institutions is the temple. If we can bring back the temple to the center stage of our social life, that will go a long way in repairing and giving healing to a civilization that has been so badly wounded. The temples were not just places of worship. They were centers of education. They were centers of arts. They were centers of crafts. The whole society's life centered around temples. And we have got such a negative view of temples that they were caste controlled or whatever. If you go to, for example, the Brihadeshwar temple, all the history associated with the making of that temple is inscribed on inscriptions around the walls of that temple. And, which were the villages which were providing food for the temple, which were the women who were associated with the temples, which part of the temple, housing complexes were given to these people, the names of each one. It is so meticulously done. The music, our music survived, our dancing tradition survived, our art survived, everything survived. So if there is, recovering a heritage is a very detailed, long and painful process. But one center can be the temple. If a temple can organize, festivals, if it can provide free food to all the people who are nearby, poor families, then they get associated with the temple, then they begin to visit the temple. And on every festival, if they can have, kathas and, all kinds of things, the temple, I think, is one way to rehabilitate our heritage and to reconnect with it.
Thank you, Advik. Meenakshi ji, if I don't ask this question, the final question, I don't think actually our discussion will not be complete. The question is, even after getting the independence, the subversion still stayed. All the subversions that happened before that, during the colonial period or during the Mughal period, all those subversions stayed. And we see the history is lopsided and it is against Hindu history or the history of the Bharat. And why is that? You can make it as briefly as possible.
Yeah, it is very surprising that when we were being ruled by the colonial powers, we were so conscious of the need to preserve Indian history through Indian eyes, if I can put it. But after independence, for several decades, Indian history writing was dominated by a foreign ideology. And that foreign ideology was not in harmony or in tune or in sympathy with our cultural heritage. So, what were the highlights of that ideology that dominated history writing? It was total lack of sympathy with indigenous traditions, cultures. It downplayed heritage in the realms of arts, crafts, philosophy, spiritual heritage. It gave importance to the Sultan, the emperor, his court, and his political policies. So, and it was an attempt to push out of view those rich regions of India which contributed so much to our heritage. So we only learned, emphasis was given only on rulers who sat on the throne of Delhi. Now, those rulers who sat on the throne of Delhi, most of them were very inglorious rulers. So many of them ruled for a very short time. And the distinguishing feature of their rule was the policy that they pursued towards the indigenous people of this country. So how is it that when you're studying Indian history in the medieval period, if you look at the syllabus, how much space is given, for example, to the Chola Empire? And then how much space is given to the glorious Vijayanagar Empire? And then the Marathas, who single-handedly brought down the Mughal Empire to its knees. How much space is given to that? We don't even know that after the Mughals, the Marathas emerged as the dominant power. And until the British defeated the Marathas, they were not certain that they were going to be the rulers of India. How much importance to give to that? And to give the example of the Sikhs, we do not study the Mughal policy towards the Sikh gurus. The Mughal empire, the Mughal emperors, their reign encompassed the reign of the Sikh gurus. It started with Babur and Guru Nanak, ended with Aurangzeb and Guru Gobind Singh to that extent. So we don't discuss how the state consciously, deliberately attacked the gurus, even executed them. So in the syllabus, in the history syllabus, we were told to study only the teachings of Guru Nanak. But after that, what happened to the Sikh? We don't know. So imagine how consciously you're erasing large parts of our history. So, you know, but the positive thing is that attempt to erase large parts of our history is, according to me, over. And it is over largely because of social media, because of platforms like yours, where people like me or anyone else can come and express my views and reach many more thousands of people than I would through a university curriculum or a university syllabus. So let's hope that, I mean, I think you people have played a role. When I started writing books, I never used to come on podcasts or something. I would say, no, what can I do? Then one fine day, rather late in the day, I realized that thousands more will view my podcast than will ever read my books. So I said, Meenakshi, you have missed this golden chance to reach to a wider audience. So now I don't refuse, because these are the people who are making history, reliving our past for us and helping us to popularize our version of the past.
Thank you, Meenakshi ji. I know actually it has went ahead than the scheduled time. I hope it was not actually too difficult for you or tiring.
Not at all. I want to say I enjoyed it thoroughly. Your questions, the viewers' questions were so relevant and gave me things that I have to think about, And I have to thank Ravi and Vidya, both of you, for inviting me and for being such wonderful hosts. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Meenakshi.
Thank you very much, Meenakshi ji.
Pleasure's all ours. We still can't get enough of you. So we are really, really hoping, we will have future sessions also with you.
Thank you.
according
Thank
to
you.
your convenience. So
I
we
look
are
forward.
looking-
And thank you for all the viewers also. Thanks all the viewers.
You should know that actually in the background, I have about questions enough for another 2 hours. But
Next time.
We'll take it for another time. Yes.
Thank
Meenakshi
you
ji,
all.
all the very best to you.
Thank you.
All the success
Thank
with the
you.
books.
Thank
And we look forward to the new books also. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Shri.